Hey, Delta Chi Nation. I'm Peter Lane, Director of Development, and I'm joined by my good friend Jeff Broderick from the Illinois State Chapter. Jeff is the president of Barrister Capital Corporation. And every year on Founders Day, we like to provide an opportunity for the big three to give you a little bit of a state of what's going on in their organization. Barrister Capital Corporation is a separate legal entity from the Board of Regents and from the Delta Chi Educational Foundation, but they're like the third arm that really helps take care of our Delta Chi properties. They help acquire housing, and then they also help manage those properties so that alumni volunteers can really serve more as a strategic advisory board and less of a day-to-day property manager. It's been a wonderful, wonderful asset to the Delta Chi enterprise. And I'm just so happy that, Jeff, you've taken some time to sit down here and talk with us. Tell everybody a little bit about Barrister and some of the exciting things you guys have been going on. And I'm just going to turn it over to you.
Okay. Thank you very much for the intro, Peter. Greatly appreciate it. Welcome, everybody. Thank you for taking the time to listen in on the 131st Founders Day and Delta Chi's Week of Giving that is sponsored by the Delta Chi Educational Foundation. As you already heard, I'm Jeff Broderick, Illinois State, 81. Yep, that's a few decades ago. But I am the president of Barrister Capital Corp, which is the national housing corps for the Delta Chi fraternity. As each key anniversary arrives, we like to kind of reflect back on what we as Delta Chi have accomplished, especially since our 100th anniversary and maybe even our 125th observation. First, Barrister didn't even exist at our 100th anniversary and not even at our 125th. We weren't even established until summer of 2016, which was just in time for the Louisville Convention, for those of you that got to attend that. I realize we may have a lot of undergrads out there that go, holy cow, 2016, that's decades ago. No, it's really only 5 years. But regardless, convention is a great opportunity. You all should plan to attend as undergrads. It will be an experience of a lifetime. So most of our peer group NAIC fraternities, especially the largest among them, have operated their own national housing corporations, some of them for decades. The concept of Delta Chi having its own national housing corps was definitely a new idea. But the initiative and the discussion surrounding a housing initiative started gaining momentum about 6 years prior as part of several executive committee board of regents strategic initiatives. They started around 2009, 2010. So he goes back a little ways to get this going. There was even an attempt to start a national housing corporation back in 2001. It didn't quite get off the ground, okay? But there was an effort. Barrister actually focuses on three key areas. One is chapter house ownership. And by that, we mean both ownership and master leasing of the properties, but we also mean housing retention. I'm sure many of you have heard of chapters when they've closed, we've lost the house because the local housing corps or whatever was operating it at the time felt they couldn't sustain it. They didn't have the money to do it. They weren't interested in doing it anymore. So they sold the property or had to sell it at a blue light special. The second item that we really focus on is chapter house management. We think that it's very important to have professional staff, consistent processes and everything to oversee and manage our properties, including leasing, rent collection, vendor payments, and everything else to ensure that our properties are financially viable and are extremely competitive on their respective campuses. The third area that we focus on is chapter house resources. And indeed, that's support resources, dealing with preferred vendors, providing information and assisting others with housing, and especially even undergrads as they may have questions or needs and so forth. But let's fast forward to today. As with many of our chapters, this last year, due to the pandemic, has been very challenging. But fortunately, because Barrister has had a diversified portfolio, we've been able to weather the pandemic, which many local housing corps have not been able to survive. This is exactly how Barrister was uniquely positioned to obtain the property at Iowa State. Although there are multiple other similar housing opportunities currently available, unfortunately, we're really not in a position to pursue them without additional capital. That's the reality of it. But indeed, Iowa State, that was a very quick, last-minute kind of deal. We were able to come in and make that happen, and also with the generosity of an awesome alumnus there. Barrister has prudently invested the limited amount of new housing initiative funds, which our undergraduate membership had voted and approved at the 2016 Louisville Convention. And so we have used that to retain, acquire, and grow our housing for our undergraduates. We've also invested in facilities, technology, and processes that allow us to scale and grow our housing business model and leverage best practices that we've gleaned from other housing organizations. Barrister currently owns, as of today, 6 properties. Those are located at Illinois State, Northern Illinois, Central Missouri, Oshkosh, Eastern Washington, and Iowa State, which again, we just acquired at the beginning of August of this year. So it's a very new addition. It's also the most expensive and largest property that we've added to our portfolio. Since the acquisition of the Iowa State property, Barrister's asset value, which is on the books, the official on the books, is in excess of $3.4 million. And the market value of those properties, because in some cases, if we had equity in the property, but we didn't mortgage that equity, we can't claim it on the books. But our estimated value is somewhere in the neighborhood of $4 to $4.5 million for our respective properties in our portfolio. The Barrister Board of Directors, which is composed of Delta Chi alumni volunteers, again, volunteers, none of us get paid to do this, we're all extremely proud of the growth in value and assets that we've been able to accomplish in really about 5 years. Barrister has 3 master lease properties too, which are at the very top tier of housing on the respective campuses. Any Delta Chi would be proud of these houses that we have at Missouri. We usually call it Mizzou, but Missouri, anybody, it's a frat castle. Okay, guys, it's a beautiful property. Missouri State, we have an awesome property that we're master leasing there. And we also have an amazing property at Chapel Hill. We need to fill it. We need the chapter to grow a lot more, but we do have an amazing property there, and they've been able to do everything to grow. We also assist with various degrees of management activities for Marquette, the Marquette chapter house. Our Barrister Property Management touches more than 250 tenants across all of our managed properties, and we strive to deliver a quality living experience for our undergrads. Expansion within the fraternity housing market is indeed challenging. For every property that we've been able to bring into the family, we've also had at least 5 or 6 efforts that simply did not work out or didn't materialize. The chapter, the alumni, and the property, whether leased or purchased, has to fit the members' needs at a price we can make work, and the municipality even has to allow multifamily or group type housing. So we face many challenges when trying to house our groups, and indeed we've made efforts at multiple campuses. It doesn't mean we didn't try, but sometimes you have to walk away for any number of reasons. Not enough money, not enough chapter support, insufficient chapter size. If the chapter is not large enough to fill the minimum requirement for the property to break even, we can't afford to eat that loss. Every property has to be financially viable on its own, okay? Same thing, we have to look at lease terms. Are the lease terms, if we're master leasing, are they onerous? Can we really afford it? Is it ideal for our guys, okay? We've worked opportunities for UNLV, Syracuse, East Stroudsburg. We were even at Florida State looking once, Rutgers, and 3 years ago, we were at Chapel Hill looking, but now we're back. And that's, like I said, we continue to research potential housing opportunities, and we're continuing to do so right now at Texas and Washington State, where we think we may have something we can make happen, and that would then enable the colonization at those locations. Some opportunities may simply take time and patience to materialize. Things like SEMO and High Point are a couple examples of that. But again, it doesn't happen overnight. It sometimes takes a lot of due diligence and a lot of time and effort, and most of all, patience. Where do we see Barrister in a few years or 5 years? We see the future for Barrister and the housing for our undergraduate chapters as something we all will take pride in. Even the recent pandemic has shown us how a national housing corporation with a diversified portfolio can leverage itself and survive challenging times rather than closing and losing prime assets. Since we've only been operating for slightly more than 5 years, we fully expect to double in size and quality of our portfolio roughly every 4 to 5 years. That's kind of our strategic goals. And like I said, we want to continue to maintain prime assets. Illinois State is a prime example of that. We are still retaining that property, and we will be recolonizing there in fall of 23 and anticipate potentially moving into that property fall of 24 or 5, depending upon the success of the colonization and the quality of the men and the number of men that we have for that property. And for those of you that are familiar with that property, it is the top fraternity house property on that campus. We anticipate that within 5 to 10 years, our chapters will all view us as a valuable partner to assist with the acquisition and management of housing that we're all proud to say, that's a Delta Chi house. We're also very interested in partnering with our local housing corps to provide the management and operational expertise and to alleviate the bulk of the effort incurred by local housing volunteers. Having been a local housing volunteer, I very much understand and relate to the level of effort it takes to always collect the money, to pay the bills, to get the repairs done, to work with the vendors and all of that. And that's something that we come in and we can take on your behalf so that your local housing corps volunteers can focus more on what would we like to do with the extra money we're going to be collecting now, or what are our strategic initiatives every 1, 2, 3 years for this property, or what improvements we'd like to make. So by improving our own housing, we strengthen our own fraternity, our visibility on campus, and our campus image, along with our own profiles and pride. Statistically, housed chapters are significantly larger than unhoused chapters. We enable our members, chapters, and our beloved fraternity to reach its full potential. We've already seen tremendous alumni support developing for our Iowa State chapter, and they've only been in this house about 6 weeks, and that they are very competitively housed on this campus for the first time since they recolonized 9 years ago. Just as a chapter is stronger when its membership is all working together, all our chapters will benefit from viewing the management of our housing as a strategic major fraternity asset. We hope our undergrads notice what's been accomplished in such a short time with the funds that we have received, and will continue to support our fraternity's housing initiatives. The Delta Chi Educational Foundation also needs the support of our alumni to continue to provide scholarships, programming, and funding for Delta Chi's educational initiatives. We're all part of this amazing brotherhood. So that's it. Back to you, Peter.
Wow, that was awesome, Jeff. I learned so much, and I definitely jotted down some things I'm going to ask you about. Boy, I love, and I'm sure this was music to alumni's ears, this line, gosh, what would you like to do with the extra money we have coming in as a result of having a property that's professionally managed? I mean, that sounds like a lot of fun. So that sounds awesome. In 5 years, double the size, maintain prime assets. I really like how you said that's a Delta Chi house, right? You have this brand identity. This is what we're going for, and
That's
what
right.
that looks like, and what the facilities are. You talked a little bit about technology. I mean, that's one of those areas, and we've talked about this where the foundation can help with that kind of thing, right? That's an educational need to have Wi-Fi throughout a facility, and that those dollars can rack up pretty quick.
Absolutely do. They absolutely do.
And you talked a little bit about the foundation, and this is something that I get questions with alumni pretty frequently. They say, we would love to find a way to incentivize guys to live in a house. We don't want to be in a situation where we have to recruit just whoever just to fill the house. How do we get our best members to live in there? A chapter scholarship account is something that could be leveraged to say, hey, you got to live in the house, you got to be a member in good standing, and we're going to provide scholarships back to those students that live in the house. And that's one of the ways you can do that.
That's a great option, because not only does it benefit the bottom line of the chapter, but it's also encouraging that student to stay engaged and involved,
Yeah,
and complete their education. So
exactly.
it's a great way to leverage all three arms of
You know, and guys will say, "What, you mean if I live in the house, I'm going to be eligible for a scholarship?" Yes, that's exactly what we're saying, and the
right.
local chapters can control that. I want to go back a minute. You talked about Barrister owning 6 properties, I think is what you
Yep,
said.
that's correct.
A master lease at 3 plus Marquette, so that's kind of 4,
Yeah.
and then um, the property management over 250 tenants. I mean, how do you guys keep up with all of that?
This year has been a challenge because of the pandemic and the need to cut costs and manage and reduce expenses. But really, what we've done is we've enabled some really, I think, some solid technology platforms that are professional property management solutions that allow us to do e-leasing, auto billing. It does automatic check payments to vendors once we approve the bill, et cetera, to send to the vendors. So nobody has to be in an office, basically printing off checks anymore and signing them and putting them in envelopes or any of that kind of stuff. So we're leveraging technology wherever we can, which obviously is my background is in technology. So that's some really key things. And the interesting part about it is 5 years ago, when we sat down and decided, and I want to point out, Eric Stice has been very, very key to all of this. He is our vice president of operations, and he does all of Barrister property management across all these properties. So, he's an absolute key resource in the operations, especially, and other aspects too. But we sat down, he and I, and we go, okay, so we need to look at property management solutions. What's out there? And we actually settled on one. The interesting fact is there are about 4 other national housing entities now that are using that same platform, but we were sort of the trailblazer in it. Okay. And again, we network with these other groups. So they're all going, well, what are you doing? And how do you do this? So we're going, well, this is what we're using, and here's why. And they pretty much adopted the same platform for their national housing that we have.
That's great. I want to talk real quick about how you said, obviously you focus on the property acquisition and the property management, but the resources, right? And that's one of those things that when Barrister lands at a new property, you've got partnerships, national partnerships already in place. So you walk in the door with a meal plan or technology or the way
That's
that,
correct.
bedding and everything is going to work and furniture. And you're able to hit the ground running with those relationships that you guys have developed. One of the things that I want to bring up though is, and talk to me a little bit about this. You guys have a house director for just about every one of these houses that helps oversee things on site. Isn't that right?
That's correct. We tend to want to put, sorry, I just noticed my PC went on battery mode. So I'm kind of like going, oh, shoot, I thought I was plugged in, but I guess I wasn't. And I was looking around real fast. I'm in the barrister office, so I don't know where the plug-in is normally. And then I turned the UPS back on, and it beeps like crazy. So it's not happy either. But regardless, we do tend, if the facility is capable, we will put a house director on site. And they're almost always a paid house director, or they receive a stipend of some sort. And that really enables us to make sure that repairs are done when they need to be done, that damages are identified and taken care of promptly, that certain levels of cleanliness are being, taken care of, etc. We really believe strongly that, and we're seeing more and more of it, the pendulum toward house directors, house dads, or house moms is swinging back to popularity, and many campuses are even insisting on it. So if anything, we'd like to think that we're helping to set that stage moving forward. but not all houses are capable. That's all. I mean, we got a couple 8-man houses.
Sure.
Can't really put one in, but
But that's
8-man
great.
should
I
be
mean,
able to take care of itself.
y'all do a training with all the house directors
We
once a
do.
year, and
Yes.
I think you guys partner with some of the other national housing groups and other fraternities and sororities. Isn't that right?
That's correct. Originally, we were invited to participate with SAE Housing to go to their house manager, house director training, which several members went to, or a couple house directors, and Eric, I believe, went to. They generously gave us permission to leverage their training program that they had assembled. And so we've taken that, Eric has taken that and adopted that specifically for training of our own house directors. And this is where our networking and working closely with other housing associations for fraternities and sororities has been extremely beneficial, because it allows us to really put something together that truly works. And then the expectations are there for the undergrad house managers and the house director, that's the adult live-in person. They know what their roles and responsibilities are.
That is excellent. So I wanted to like dive into some of that because it's really, I mean, that's kind of where the rubber hits the road and some of the tactfulness and how you're able to manage all of these different properties from a distributed location
Right.
with so many different people.
Right. It is.
That's great. Well, Jeff, I really don't have a whole lot of other questions, but I guess I just have one personal one here. What is it about this that makes you so passionate about it? I mean, obviously, you're a volunteer. You said you don't get paid, but you're putting in some hours, and so are some of the other guys on the board. And you've got a full-time person there in Eric, but I mean, why are you so excited about this? You pushed really hard to create this several years ago, and you've been very hands-on.
Well, when I was an undergrad, I was fortunate enough that we had a house and was able to live in that house, and force what I felt were some of the really lifelong friendships by living together. You really get to know people well. You also really learn how to handle people, to deal with people, how to work with people, because you have to, when you're living together. So fast forward, my chapter closed and then it reopened, and my son was able to get the chapter recolonized and started. And suddenly we didn't have a property. And the process and the effort and the work it took to get these guys housed in anything that was even, I'll just call it was substandard. And it was so disappointing because we had to start from scratch. We had nothing. And here we look around and we're seeing where a lot of these, I'll call them the big dogs, are out there. They have national housing corporations, and they can come to campus and buy, build, or master lease a property, and we're shut out because we didn't have those capabilities. And it took us years to get to the point that we were able to really acquire an awesome house. And again, we didn't want to lose them again. So I've been very passionate, partly because of I saw what it takes, how hard it can be to get a house or get a group housed, especially when it's on a campus where housing is very competitive.
Yeah.
And you need to be housed to grow.
Yeah, you mentioned Texas. I mean, anybody that's ever been to UT Austin knows it's just tight down there around campus. It's tough to find housing.
Yep.
I know that group has had an EKI account for decades. They've got some money set aside, but just because you have the money doesn't mean there's a good property available.
Well, and Iowa State is a classic example. They were originally housed. They had a house there, but when the chapter closed, they couldn't sustain that property anymore. And so when they finally did get recolonized successfully, they're like nomadic. And on that campus, if you've ever been to it, you have to be housed to be competitive. You have to be. If you are nomadic, you'll probably be no larger than 25 to 35 guys on that campus.
Yeah.
Now, our guys were at the upper edge of that, which was great. But now we've been able to secure and acquire a property. And I'll again say, because of the generosity of an alumnus who, provided a private mortgage to us.
Wow.
And that property then can hold upwards of 50 people if we needed to. Okay.
Wow.
And it is really close to campus, and it's a really prime house. There are large bedrooms, Jack and Jill bathrooms, etc. So I think our undergraduate members are pretty happy. I know our alumni are up there. So
Well, that speaks to, Greeks, for the most part, are very successful in life. And we certainly have those types of alumni among our ranks that could stroke a check, but they have to have the confidence that that
yep,
asset's going to be taken care of. And that's where you guys come in. So
yep.
I could talk about this all day long. The last question I have is really kind of about, if somebody out there is listening to this going, I'm interested in that, or
Excuse me.
how do we go about getting in touch with you and what's that process like? Could you talk just a little bit about how you guys look to work with partners in the space?
So we really do like to engage with the alumni and the undergraduate chapter together. Okay. We can't make it happen if it's only undergrads that have it. We have to make sure that we have the support of the alumni advisor. If there is a local housing corps or not, we have to make sure that they're all on board to make something happen. Okay. Typically, we're going to expect them to also contribute to what it's going to take to get this thing going. All right. And if there was previously a local housing corps, they may have had some extra money and it's still laying around or could be used.
Okay.
So we like to engage with all aspects of a chapter or colony. They can reach out to me. They can email Broderick at barristercapital.org is a great way to do it. And we'll take it from there. All I can say is it also really, really helps if they know of potential housing opportunities at the respective campuses, because we may not know those campuses as well. We may not know what's available. We network, but that doesn't mean we're always going to know when something comes up. Okay. And also, timing is critical. You can't go generally acquiring a property August 2nd and expect to have tenants, because most of them are already in apartment leases or something. So, but that was because we had something else lined up that happened to fall through. So we
Sure.
did have the undergrads stay with us to be able to move into what ultimately turned out to be a far better property.
Sounds like you guys are a very nimble task force and can really make just about anything happen if there's
We
an
wish.
opportunity. But it obviously works best if you've got 6 to 9 months of some lead time to get leases signed and get the property ready, or
Correct.
Delta County ready to move in.
But the real opportunities generally arrive in the April and May timeframe, and their blue light specials.
Yeah.
Okay. That goes back to those of you that may not remember, Kmart days used to have blue light specials, and that was when something was on sale really, really cheap.
That's great. Appreciate you describing that. Well, Jeff, thank you for sitting down and taking some time. And, I also want to say thank you for your partnership with the foundation and being a trustee society donor. Just about everybody on your board is a donor as well. And Eric Stice is also another trustee society donor. So,
Yep.
we're so thankful that you guys are not only providing a really awesome service to Delta Chi, and really, you guys are the curb appeal, right? But
We hope.
you're also a participant, at the foundation level. And then I know that you're a past regent, and several of the other guys are very involved with the board of regents. So it's really a veteran team, and we're lucky to have you guys. So that's all that I've got. Any closing words for you? All right, then. Thank you very much, Jeff, and happy Founders Day to you.